ever paused to wonder whether the patterns guiding your choices were designed by you or by the invisible forces around you? Well, welcome back, listeners, to today's episode on the BizBlend podcast. I'm your host, Sana, and today we are about to pull out the microscope and zoom in on the matrix of entrepreneurship, purpose, and personal design. My guest has spent decades exploring the unseen side of life, interpreting dreams, connecting history and culture, and challenging how leaders, seekers, and skeptics alike walk out their own story. So, this isn't just about business tactics, it's about uncovering the DNA of your design listeners and how it shapes every decision, every risk, every leap. So, let's all slow down, reflect, and see what we might discover about the matrix we live in, and maybe the one we have built for ourselves. Listeners, meet my incredible guest, Caleb Matthews. Caleb, welcome to the show, and it is really an honor to have you here with us.
Thank you very much, Sana. It's an honor to be here on BizBlend, and I'm very excited to see how deep we go. Just to use a quote from the Matrix movie, how deep in the rabbit hole we go today, exploring this microscope on entrepreneurialism and being outside of the Matrix.
Oh, wow, that's so interesting. And this is such an interesting, unique take on entrepreneurship, not only the 101s of business and stuff, but I think this is such a holistic take on it. And I think it perfectly aligns with what we are trying to explore through BizBlend and through all the conversations done here. So let's start, Caleb, with your journey. You have described your journey as moving between wildly different worlds. New Age festivals, Bible colleges, leadership circles. Um, when you look back, when you do some kind of introspection into there, what thread actually held all those experiences together for you?
Mm, that's a great question. One that I'm super passionate about answering each and every time that a podcaster or a person, wherever environment I'm in, asks me that question. So I'm thrilled to answer it. And that is the thread that held everything together for me in each of those seasons and each of those environments, ones that many of them I'm still a part of right now, is the
Mhm.
DNA of design. It's something called the DNA of design. And our audience may be thinking right now, Caleb, Sana, what are you talking about? What is the DNA of design? Well, the DNA of design, I believe, is the framework and the design that each person has been created with on this planet, the giftings, the abilities, how each part of our three-part being is connected and how each of those parts functions in our earthly avatar. I believe that we're three-part beings. So we have a spirit, we have a mind, and we have a body. And when we are in touch with all three of those elements, then we can begin to fully express our giftings in each of these environments. That's really the thread that held me together in over the years through the different environments and the different seasons of being in all these various places.
That's so interesting, Caleb. That's really very, it kind of, sounds like a bit mysterious, but then interesting as well. And was that thread something that you only noticed in hindsight, or did you feel it guiding you in that moment?
Well, it's something that's been guiding me. If I'm going to answer that portion, I have to jump a bit farther back. It's been something that's been guiding me since childhood. And when I was 6 years old, was really the first vivid memory I can remember was a dream or what we call a vision of the night season. And that's when I first became to be in touch with, okay, we're not just human beings with a physical body, but we have a spirit. We have a code map that happens in the realm of the unseen that's meant to be translated to the seen. And we also have a mind that processes a lot of what we see in the invisible and bring it forth to the visible. And that's what I mean to be outside of the matrix, because in our world today,
Mm,
especially in the West. Over in the Western culture part of the world, Western, Europe, North America, we're very
mm,
driven for this hustle culture. And I
mm.
wanted to ask you a question back, and that is, and obviously our audience as well. Sana, have you heard the difference between the dichotomous worldview and the trichotomous worldview? Have you ever heard of that before?
I'm afraid not, Caleb. Not at all.
May,
Please
may,
tell us.
may I expound?
Yeah, please, please.
Absolutely, yeah. So the dichotomous worldview is really, especially more so prevalent in the Western focus, which is on the mind and on the body. So on the mind, will, and emotions, and on the physical strength in the body, but not necessarily as much on the third element, which is the spiritual element. Whereas the farther east that we go, especially many of our listeners that are listening in from India and Eastern countries will be familiar with this. The Eastern cultures are more open and more pursuing of the spirit, soul, and body dynamic that are all connected together. And when
Mhm.
those are connected together and we're engaging with each of those elements, then we can fully explore our DNA of design and our fullest potential. Because I believe if we're only looking at the emotional, so the mental and the physical, we can miss out on so much of the spiritual.
Hmm. To me personally, Caleb, it absolutely makes sense. But now, some kind of skepticism, if I would like to bring in here, just to make it more nuanced.
Sure.
Um, now, many would say that this is kind of, you know, um, clashing because entrepreneurship or some of the, concepts, um, because I believe if in case we're talking about the Eastern and the Western cultures, let's try to absorb the good parts of both the cultures and try to blend something that is, of course, beneficial for the entire humanity in here.
Of
But
course.
then, so on the other end, there's some kind of clashing in here, as per, let's say the skeptics that business and entrepreneurship is all about numbers, strategy, data, mind, of course, body. But there's no place for spirituality in here. And now many people will, kind of um, would like to blur the lines between spirituality or religious belief systems or something like that.
Mm.
What's your viewpoint on this?
That's great, great point. I'm glad that we're going here because this is something that I believe has been misinterpreted, shall I say,
Mm,
misconstrued over the many hundreds of years ever since world religions have been introduced. And I think there's a big difference between religion and our DNA of design or that spirituality. Everyone's got their own interpretation, but I
mm,
believe that spirituality and the actual flow and the pure essence of spirituality versus religion are two separate entities. And what I mean by that is this. I'll give an example since you brought up
yeah.
entrepreneurship. And that is
Mhm,
if a business person, we're in BizBlend right now, a business owner, entrepreneur, somebody, we're all looking for ideas. These ideas, whether it be a construct of an idea or a pattern or a blueprint or a formula, all these things come from the unseen. Like everything that we create physically that is seen is built from
mhm,
an unseen world within our minds, and our mind is pulling that. Some people will say it's like a gut instinct or like your passion or the core of your
mhm,
being, but that is what I'm talking about when I mean the spiritual element, being in touch with the spiritual element, because
mhm,
intellectualism and formula can only, I believe, can only get us so far before we hit a
mhm,
wall. And when I wake up in the morning as an entrepreneur of two businesses, because I own two businesses, one being the SeeLink, more like motivational speaking business, of course,
mhm,
which I'm communicating with you right now on, and the other, the Itinerant Oasis, my business in Mexico. I try to wake up with the same mentality that I'm pulling from my spirit, and that is, what is the purpose behind this? What is the
mhm,
purpose behind this? Not just the formula or how I'm going to get it done, but why am I doing this? What influence is it going to have, not just for me and those around me, but for those on the
mhm,
earth? What is my purpose on the earth? And I believe we can only truly explore that answer when we're in touch with our spirit, our mind, and our body, not just our mind and our body.
Hmm, that's beautifully explained, Caleb. It is. I'll once again bring a bit of skepticism here. Now,
Yes.
do you think that all these thoughts and these reflections around purpose, or am I feeling aligned or not? All do they come at a certain stage, when we feel that we are secured either financially, emotionally, or physically? Because let's just admit that, if we consider the reality of the world, even if you feel purposeful, if you do not feel, you have to keep on paying your bills.
Yes.
So what's your thought on this, Killer?
That's a good that's another good question. See, the BizBlend, ladies and gentlemen, if this is your first time tuning into this podcast, the BizBlend asks the good questions, not just the cliche questions, the good questions. This is great, Sana. I love this. And this elaboration on this question for me is finding our purpose, I think, is not just something that happens when we reach a seasonal goal or a milestone or checking something off on the box. I believe finding our purpose is enjoying the fragrance, if I can use an analogy here, of the flowers along the way. Often at times, many people who are listening to this right now, including your Insana, who you may have heard the phrase, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey
Yeah.
between here and the destination. Destination's wonderful, but there's something magical about exploring the fragrance of unveiling our own individual design, our DNA design on this journey. And in those moments, whether it be on a podcast speaking with somebody across the world like we're doing right now, or
Mhm.
it's standing at the bus stop and seeing a stranger you never met for the first time and they make a comment about something that makes you think of some idea or triggers a creative rush in you, or you go to the park and you hear the doves cooing and that reminds you that you need to be in touch with this element or that there are so many different encounters along the way that are outside of planning everything to a T, because it's good to plan. I'm not bashing. Of course, we need our mind, we need our body, we need to be motivated in our physique, in our mindset, but we need to also reach for the realm of the mystery and the unexpected. One of my mentors, he's passed on many years ago, he advised me in this very strongly, and he said, "Caleb, never lose the awe of the journey. Never lose that. Because if we lose the wonder and the awe like a child has in that childlike state, we lose a grip on really the pure essence and the flow of why we're doing what we're doing in the first place, why we started that business, why we're doing this in the organization, why we're releasing that message. Never lose the awe. And I think that that is something that pieces everything together. I hope that answers your question.
Beautiful, beautifully, Caleb. Beautiful. I really loved how you brought you know, the senses here, the visual, the olfactory, senses here. I think that really, really gives life, a kind of its identity to the entire, concept here, or the answer here. I really loved that. Um, and let's go to mental health as well, because we are talking about um, mind, body, and spirit as well here. Now, when because you mentioned about DNA, and you also have shared that you have had experiences in your childhood as well. Do you think that whatever subconsciously, as an entrepreneur, as a person, I am taking in from my childhood experiences, they are going in my subconscious?
Mm,
Um, and if those experiences are creating some kind of blockers or self-limiting beliefs or some kind of conditioning, which is kind of blocking me to take those risks, which I feel that yes, they do align with my vision, my purpose. Do you think they have a larger role to play in there?
Yes, yes, I do. Because just to go into a little bit of science here, is that the most developmental years of each of our lives is that childhood phase between the age of 6 and 13 years old, all the way leading up to teenagehood. That those years very much form and construct the mindset that we have in our subconscious. You're absolutely correct. And for some people, it can be liberating to reach back into their childhood and use those elements and applying those to what they're doing today in their entrepreneurial endeavors or in their journey. For some,
Mhm,
as you mentioned, it can be a blockage. It can be reaching back. It's like, oh man, like when I think back of my childhood, it could be someone's childhood, maybe it could be there are beard blockages there, self-limiting beliefs, as you say. But for me, one thing I like to ask people like that when they're sitting in front of me, if someone says, "Hey, Caleb, I just can't remember a lot of really positive factors in my childhood," I would push a question back forward, and that is, okay, whether it be childhood or teenagehood or whatever element in your life leading up to right now, what is
mhm,
one moment that you can remember that brought you incredible joy? Now, it
mhm,
doesn't have to be something really complex. It could be as simple as, oh, when I was 7 or 8 years old, I remember kicking a ball with a dog, a neighborhood dog next door, and the dog was happy, and we played with the ball, and people thought it was fun, and animals trusted me, and the neighbors thought I was just somebody who's very kind. It could be something simple like that. And I like to encourage, because this goes into the realm of dream interpretation as well, to look back on one of those moments that brought you incredible joy and say, what is this a picture of? If I could interpret this as a parable, what would this be
mhm.
telling me about something I can take from it and apply to my adult life in my entrepreneurial journey? And that, I think, is part of the answer, is being able to reach back and take those things, those lessons, and present them in our current day. And for every person, it looks different. Everyone's got a different upbringing, but I truly believe every person has one moment, whether or another, somewhere along the line, that brought them incredible joy. And that are very indicative and key hints into what your DNA of design is and what your passion is to express to the world through your business.
Absolutely. Once again, beautiful amalgamation of senses and practical insights in there, Jake. Um, and you have worked with leaders, skeptics, and seekers, Caleb. So, what differences do you notice in how each group approaches clarity and breakthrough? That's a very interesting question, actually.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, because it's you're now we're hitting back on the we talked about at the very beginning, the skeptics. Most skeptics I find, they're in touch with their body and their mind, but the spirit, as you said, is a concept that usually most skeptics will categorize towards religious beliefs, or this is woo-woo, or that's out there and not really something that is to be applied. So for a skeptic, I usually like to approach that element by asking questions or presenting parables or ideas or pointing back to history. Like history speaks.
Mhm,
It's one of the core values I believe and offer in the SeeLink is that history never lies. History has an undefeated streak. I like to
mhm,
say is that we can always extract something from history. And that is something that I believe a skeptic usually will be able to accept when you point back towards that or in storyboard form. For somebody who's more of leaders or those that are more in touch with their um, spirit, soul, and body element as far as in the whole scale, then of course they're more open to have some of these conversations. But the language is always going to be different, and which is why when I approach each of these groups that you mentioned, I always like to ask this question. And I do this when I'm doing dream interpretation. I do this when people are starting to ask about, okay, like, what is this whole spirit, soul, and body? Like, whether it's skeptic or seeker or leader alike, I say, what does spirituality mean to you? Not religion, because that's something that's a completely different topic, but what is
mhm,
spirituality? What is the core driving force that gets you up in the morning? What is that? spirituality mean to you? And if you attribute it to God or higher power or my higher purpose or my higher self, then that's up to you. But when I ask that question, that's where I usually am able to understand where that person is coming from and then speak in language that they understand. Because if I'm using language that's triggering, I'm going to lose that trust. And I want to be able to have trust in the conversations and the presentation with the individuals and groups that I'm with. And this is something that I've seen over my travels to Africa, the Philippines, the United States, western part of Europe. It's a good question to ask because I think it disarms people in the best way possible.
Well, I think this itself it invites so much clarity in here, and I think another aspect also that aspect or kind of an insight that um, if even if my opinions or my thoughts or my belief systems they may not um, align with yours, um, I am not going to be dismissive of the fact, even if you are skeptical about what I'm saying. At least through words, through language, I can make you accept or maybe at least make you aware about what's my approach or what's my thought on this. And I think that that really really needs a lot of patience and clarity in there, and of course beautiful leverage of words in there. And with that, have skeptics ever taught you something, Caleb, that shifted your own perspective? Like the boomerang or something like that.
Skeptics, yeah. No, I would say that the skeptics, they've taught me this, and that is the principle that I believe is that opposition, where there's opposition or where there's conflicting resistance, there's
Mhm.
opportunity. And I truly am an advocate for this, and that is be wary. This is a parable. Be wary when all men or all women speak well of you and agree with you 100%. Because I believe if that happens somewhere along the line, you and I or us, we've sold out on our true DNA of design. If everybody in the world agrees with what I'm saying, I've probably sold out. So when there's skeptics, when there's resistance, when there is a boomerang effect, as you call it, and someone is opposing my idea and maybe not agreeing with me 100%, but they're challenging me, I think that's a good sign because I don't believe that we're all meant 100% to agree with each other 100% of the time. In fact, this lost art of debate and exploring ideas, especially we've seen in recent world events, is a sad thing when we can't explore ideas and at the end shake hands or say that was really good. In the ancient world, in the Middle Eastern world, thousands of years ago, it was a normal practice to have these passionate debates. And then at the end, be able to agree and say, you know what? Let's all go and just say that we're just going to agree to disagree and be at peace. That's what the Greek philosophers were able to do so well when they had a lot of these discourses. That's what in biblical, um, in the analogy as well to biblical history as well too. The Bereans, they were a type of people that would study the scriptures and the Word of God, and even if there was a different denomination or sect that didn't agree with each other, at the end, when they studied the Word of God together and they disagreed and they discoursed and they agreed in some things and disagreed in other things, it was the intention of having that open form where you're able to respect the other person's spirit, soul, and body, even if there are other elements that they disagree with you on. So to bring that back full circle, the boomerang effect, you're asking me, what have my skeptics taught me? They've taught me to keep me quick on my toes and to be encouraged when I have resistance because that means that okay, well, that means that I'm exploring what I'm supposed to be doing and I'm just at peace with my ideas will be liberating for some and offensive to others. Because I think when we look back in history, anybody who ever accomplished anything in history had people who
Mhm.
thought their ideas were liberating and others thought that they were not liberating. But ultimately, that's up to the listener. All we can do is present, and then that's it. Like I always like to say, and this is what I want to say to my audience right now here on BizBlend, as I'm talking with Anna, is if you've been listening to me today, you think, okay, Caleb, I agree with that, not that. That's okay. I give full freedom to my audience, and I've said this for 20 years, and I've done public speaking to any environment, any group of people. Chew on the meat and spit out the bones. Chew on the meat and spit out the bones because there's sustenance in there for you, even if it's 1% for somebody or 50% for somebody else. That's what I'm aiming for. If you get one thing that I said that made you think something different, that's great. If you disagree with everything else, that's okay. But chew on the meat, spit out the bones.
Yeah, of course. It's and listeners, that's figuratively, not literally. Well, so all the vegetarians and vegans, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Great. So before we wrap up, one last, I think it's a very, very, um, thoughtful question. With, of course, with a bit of contradiction in there, Caleb, that if our purpose is truly embedded, or let's say, like, written into our DNA, do we really have freedom to choose?
I like it how we're bringing the ship into port with one of the deepest questions we've asked so far. Do we have a choice? Free will. Well, here's what my perspective is on it, and that is, well, have you seen the Avengers movies like Infinity Wars or Endgame? That those
Till
movies?
endgame. Till endgame.
Yeah.
Not a.
Yeah. So with Endgame, we have, okay, one possible solution to win the victory and all these other paths that don't win the victory. Here's
Yeah.
what my take is on this. My take is I believe, Caleb Matthews, I believe that every person on this planet was created in the image of a creator, of God, of a spiritual force that created the universe and created the earth and created people. And that a DNA of design and a high calling and a purpose and giftings is placed in every single person. Now, I also believe in free will because I believe if God just created a planet of robots, it would be pretty lame, and there wouldn't really be any mystery or wonder to that. But in that aspect, I believe we all have a choice of whether to pursue the good or the best. And I always like to say that the good sometimes is the enemy of the best. And, we can do good things. I can do good things. Heck, I could have stayed in my 10-year career and continued to work in sales and been at the top of my game and stayed in a very comfortable career position and been successful. And that would have been good. But for me, best is doing what I was created to do by the DNA of my design, and that is to motivate people, to help them in whatever way I can reach the purpose to which they've been put here in this planet within their own giftings. And that's through motivational speaking, that's through uplifting hearts and souls, and doing
Mhm.
podcasts like this. And I wouldn't be able to do this full time being a podcaster or presenting online content or speaking
Mhm.
more or less what I'm doing if I was working continually a 40-hour a week full-time job. It just wouldn't be possible. And that would be only the good, but this is the best. That's what I mean. And that is, I do believe we have a choice to choose whether it's the good, whether it's the average, or whether it's the best. But we all have a choice. We all have those forks in the road. And I want to encourage our audience here today at this point in the conversation to ask yourself, ask your higher power, ask spirit, whatever terminology you put to it, what is the best, the highest purpose to what I've been put here on this planet? And when you pursue that question and the answer to that question, you're going to be put in the BizBlend blender, exactly in the right place as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, and as a leader on this planet.
Wow, that was mic drop. That was mic drop, Caleb. And beautiful. Beautiful. And of course, if listeners they would like to connect with you, what would be the best way?
The best two websites, well, first of all, www.calebmatthews.net. That's my SeeLink brand, my motivational public speaking business, where you can see content, YouTube content. I've started my own YouTube channel called The SeeLink, so you can find me on YouTube at The SeeLink. But also, I've got some of my podcast libraries as they can become available of places where I've done guest speaking on and some other past podcasts. And in the future, in the next few months, I'll be starting my own podcast. And definitely want to extend the invitation to you, Sana, if you would like to be a guest speaker in my podcast. I would love to have you. But that is one of the places that the audience can find me. The other place is my Mexico business in San Jose del Cabo, Mexico, called the Itinerant Oasis. And this is a place that I've been running now for this will be my third season. It's like a workspace slash Airbnb. It's a specifically modernized executive condo customized for podcasters, online content creators, and people who are digital nomads who want to have some fun in the sun, but also lock in and do their online content. So I've got 1 gig internet there, 2 work desks, lighting, microphones. All you got to do is bring your laptop and your headphones, plug and play, and there you go. But you can find me on www.theitinerantoasis.com. I'm also available on Instagram. Caleb on the Runway is my Instagram hashtag, and Twitter, Caleb Matthews without the E. And finally, as I said, YouTube at the SeeLink. But this has been great. And Sana, I just want to thank you so much for having me on BizBlend. It's truly been a privilege and an honor to speak to your audience, wherever they may be listening from, across India and across Europe, across the Middle East, across Asia, across whatever continent they're in North America, across the world.
Beautiful, beautiful. Or maybe across the cosmos as well. Oh, beautiful. Listeners, what I'll do for all of you is I'll have all these links, the details in the show notes. So just refer to them along with this episode on wherever you're listening to this podcast. And Caleb, thank you for the generous, generous, warm invitation. And thank you so much for, helping us explore the idea of the matrix, not as some sci-fi, movie concept or simulation, but I think these are the web of choices, beliefs, and patterns that shape our businesses and our lives. So definitely, I think there's a beautiful reminder in there for all of us listeners that there's definitely power in slowing down, the design we carry to examine that, and also having that curiosity, asking if the life we are building is truly ours. So, to all of you, may you walk forward with a little more mindfulness, little more harmony, and the courage to build not just a business, but a life that feels like your own design. So, until then, this is your host, Sana, and you have been listening to BizBlend, where business and being meet. Thank you.